A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
On a Wednesday, it certainly is a long tradition, isn't it? Getting an update, filling in the gaps. What's going on in the nation of Israel and more broadly throughout the Middle East? Mandy Worby is our in-house authority on what's happening. She just has a wonderful passion for the nation of Israel and keeping up to date with the news. Mandy, welcome back.
Oh, hi, Neil. I'm barely keeping up with it because it's changing literally by the hour sometimes. So there's so much to get through and you have no idea how much is on the cutting room floor at the moment. There's so much.
Well, let's go with the big things.
Yeah.
Let's say the priority issues. It's been, quite some weeks now since Iran's massive missile attack on Israel, and there's been a response over that time, although some have been saying, where is the response? What have you been monitoring?
Well, what was really interesting about that was when Iran sent those ballistic missiles into Israel, Israel said she was going to respond, but she said she was going to respond strategically, that she would respond surprisingly. And, of course, everybody said, she's going to go for the nuclear site. She's going to go for the oil fields. And, of course, everybody's saying, don't do it, don't do it. And America comes out and says, don't you dare touch the nuclear sites and the oil sites. And very, very quickly, Israel said, okay. It's because she wasn't planning on going for those particular sites. And so what she did was she was very, very strategic and preempting further problems coming from Iran. Do you remember when, let's go back to 1981, June 1981, when Israel preemptively destroyed the unfinished Iraqi nuclear facility at Osirak?
Some are going to have better memory than others, but yeah.
And what she did was, the whole world condemned her, but everybody also breathed a sigh of relief that Saddam Hussein no longer had, or almost didn't have, nuclear weapons because he was crazy enough to use them. So everybody was very grateful for that. Well, Iran learned her lesson from that, in that she decided not to have all of her nuclear facilities in one place. So it's spread far and wide throughout Iran, which is a huge country. They're in underground, they're in mountains, so not easy to access. And the other thing is that at the moment, Russia is providing Iran with a lot of military equipment, and in return, Iran is supplying Russia with, unending, no-limit amounts of oil energy. And Russia needs that for her war with Ukraine. And so if Israel went in there and touched any of those things, that would bring Russia right into the conflict, which would then bring America right into the conflict, and it would turn into a Russia versus America type thing. Nobody wants that because that would also bring in their allies as well. So let's not go there.
It's a little bit like this is how close we are to world war. What actually have you been able to observe has been the Israeli attempt to, in fact, have some sort of reaction to that huge airstrike?
Well, exactly. So what she did was, like she said she was going to be, strategic and surprising. Well, first of all, she sent in over 100 fighter jets, and they took out radar systems in both Syria and Iraq that Iran uses. So that basically cut her eyesight from what was coming in. 100 fighter jets came in, did their work and got out again, including refueling on the way as well. Not a scratch, not a loss. So that actually took them by a lot of surprise. They took out facilities, they're called, I'm just trying to think, just to remember the name of what they took out. They took out, they're called a vertical planetary batch mixer. They took out a facility where these things were, they're huge. They're like if you stood 3 men on top of each other, that's how tall each of these devices is. They took out 12 of them, and they are used for the manufacture of solid rocket fuel, which means Iran can no longer manufacture these massive, great big missiles and rockets, which means she can't use them herself, she can't send them to Hezbollah, and she can't send them to the Houthis, she can't send them to Hamas. So they've cut down a massive amount of their weapons manufacturing capabilities. They also took out a drone manufacturing facility. As I said, the 100 aircraft covered a 2,000-kilometre journey, got in, got out, and they took out their radar and air defence systems. They reckon that their rocket or missile manufacturing capability has been set back between 1 and 2 years. I heard one report saying 3 years, but let's go 1 to 2 years. Excuse me. And in Tehran, they also destroyed, I've seen the video footage of a huge weapon storage facility was destroyed completely. Not a single civilian was killed. Not a single civilian infrastructure was killed. I think there was about 20 within the Iranian guards and soldiers. Other than that, all military. It was so precise that, the world sat back shocked. And that's why it was so strategic and pinpoint that everybody said, well, what happened? You didn't do anything. Oh, they jolly well did. And it's basically a strike that has preempted any other strikes coming in from Iran because in many respects, Iran is now quite vulnerable.
So a surgical, strategic response from Israel. But now, as I understand it, Iran is planning another retaliation.
Yeah, they are. They have declared that it is a duty that they have to respond, even though they're the ones who started the whole jolly thing in the beginning. They're the ones who've supplied and provoked and encouraged Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They're the ones who started it all. But a senior Revolutionary Guard officer named Mohammad Reza Nakari, he said this, in the coming days, you will, and this is a couple of days ago, so any day it could be, in the coming days, you will see what severe blows will be dealt to the Zionist regime, and the Zionists will be surprised with new, innovative and creative actions and they will suffer greater falls. Okay, and the Parliament of Iran has also said they're about to increase their defence budget by 200%. So at the moment, Israel is calling for a complete dismantling of the Iranian axis of evil, and that's going to involve other nations as well. But the biggest priority is to basically cut the head off this snake so that it can no longer be the terrorist supporter, provider, trainer and supplier that it has been.
Okay, there are all sorts of forces aimed at Israel from outside.
Yep.
There's some issues within Israel too, and Israel trying to defend itself against some uprising within, and the organisation that we've all become familiar with, UNRWA, which Australia makes a financial contribution to, it's now been expelled from Israel.
Yes, the Israeli Knesset, their parliament, voted overwhelmingly, just a few holdouts that voted against it, but they're getting rid of UNRWA in Israel. UNRWA for many, many decades now has been supporting and encouraging and participating in terrorism with Hamas. And UN Watch has been informing the UN with so much evidence, it's ridiculous. But after October 7, it became absolutely shocking what has been revealed. And so Israel's parliament has said, we've got enough terror to deal with on our borders. We've got enough with Hamas and Hezbollah inside as well. We're not going to have some outside UN agency in here helping them do it. So persona non grata, out they go. The whole world is condemning Israel for it. But here's the thing. Did you know there are two agencies within the UN that look after refugees? The UNHCR, they look after all the refugees in the world. And then there's UNRWA. They look after only one group, the Palestinians. So if they are no longer able to be in Israel's borders, there'll be no need to fund a terrorist supporting organisation that is under the banner of the UN. But Israel will work with other agencies and other aid groups to meet the needs of the Palestinians. It just won't be UNRWA. That's the deal.
Let's talk about some of the propaganda, some of the rumours that are floating around. There was a rumour about another deal with Hamas, a ceasefire and releasing hostages. What was that one about?
Yeah, well, the rumour was it was a 2-day ceasefire and then that Hamas would then release 4 hostages. Bibi came out and he said, if that was a real deal, I'd have taken it, but it doesn't exist. It's not a real deal. I don't know who puts these out. Sometimes I think it is because it has been in the past the US government, because they think that then pushes Israel to capitulate. But Bibi said, It's not happening because it doesn't exist. And there has been another deal that I think it was somebody from Mossad actually went to Qatar to talk about a deal and came away saying Hamas is just refusing. They will not come to any kind of an agreement or a deal. So things will go on as they are, except the good news coming out of Gaza at least is that Israel captured and arrested 600 Hamas terrorists. They all surrendered basically. So Hamas is basically well and truly on its knees. Well, we need to be praying for the people of Gaza because they've had enough of Hamas, and it's Hamas that is the stranglehold there. They just will not stop. It's like they're all willing to just die on this hill and make everybody else around them die, even their own people, and this is not good. It's not good.
Perhaps the war with Hamas could be close to some sort of conclusion, but then there's always to the north Hezbollah. Any updates here on the war with Hezbollah?
Yeah, I'll have to get this through this really quickly. It was estimated before the war that they had about 200,000 rockets aimed at Israel from Iran. Well, the IDF says they're down to about 20% left. So that's still 40,000 rockets. It's still a lot, but they're down to 20%. Many of their rank and file are literally just packing up and fleeing. Israel has demolished so many tunnels, huge, great big things, underneath entire villages, putting the civilians at risk. Obviously, she's taken out so much infrastructure of Hezbollah in Beirut. She's just finished with Tyre. She's moved on to Sidon this morning or overnight. They are on their knees. And what's been really good, the Christian community in Lebanon and others in Lebanon are now speaking out. It's like the fear of Hezbollah has been kind of stripped away. They're now speaking out. They don't want Iran in their country. They don't want Syria in their country. They don't want Hezbollah in their. They want their country back, and they think that they could have a really good, solid peace with Israel if they could just get rid of Iran and the terrorists.
Mandy, most Christians are in solidarity with Israel and recognising there's some good things that you've been reporting for us this morning. There's also internal threat, though. There might be rockets that were coming across borders, but there's also those terror threats within. Well,
as I mentioned earlier, there are Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah cells inside Israel within various different towns and communities that are governed completely by the PLO. And Israel is having to deal with those as well. But there's also terror attacks within Israeli society and community where there's, like just last week, there was a massive ramming attack. An Arab truck driver rammed his truck into a bus stop, and there was about 35 people that were injured. Many were stuck under the bus. They managed to get them all to hospital. One man died, sadly. But this is what they're dealing with. There was another ramming attack of a Palestinian just ploughing into a police vehicle. Fortunately, it was seconds before the police officer moved out of the way. Stabbing attacks, more ramming attacks, and Israel's having to deal with these all the time on a daily basis. But bit by bit, even those terrorist cells are being dismantled. They have to be very strategic and careful with those because they don't want to hurt civilians, but they're embedded amongst their own civilian community. And so it's difficult, but she's got to do what she's got to do so that at some point, hopefully in the near future, the Arab communities and the Israeli communities, be they Jew, Gentile, whatever, will be safe again. That's the goal.
Well, Mandy Worby, always appreciate your great insights into what's going on in Israel and more broadly across the Middle East and very, very significant times that we live in. Mandy, thanks so much for your updating listeners today on 2020.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.